Welcome to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet with Ryan Poterack from Poterack Capital Advisory. You have unique values, objectives, fears, life experiences, and biases. Any financial professional who ignores or minimizes the importance of your story may not be able to help you achieve your ideal outcomes or hit your goals. It's time to experience the PCA difference. In this podcast, we help business executives, soon-to-be retirees, and solutions-based individuals overcome the anxiety leading up to their upcoming years. We do this by initiating in-depth discussions about the financial aspects of retirement, like tax planning and asset allocation, alongside, and often overlooked, personal and lifestyle aspects. Join us for this journey where we explore retirement from a contrarian point of view, as Ryan draws from years of experience and qualified guest professionals to help you explore the true purpose of your money in retirement and the impact you want to make in your golden years. Ryan Poterack and Alec Quaid offer investment advice through Private Advisor Group, which is a federally registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Private Advisor Group and Poterack Capital Advisory are separate entities. This information is not intended to be a substitute for individualized legal or tax advice. Please consult your legal or tax advisor regarding your specific situation.
Twists and turns and setbacks, but then the success and reward. Well, that's life, isn't it? Wealth manager Ryan Poterack has had his fair share of life experiences, and he's helped many clients with their own ups and downs. And we're not just talking about the stock market here. So, Ryan, what challenges have you personally experienced that have really ultimately helped you to become better?
Hey, Patrice. Well, I guess a whole bunch of them. That's also kind of a nice way of saying I've been around for a while, getting older. I guess I look back over my 3+ decades in the industry, and where I had the biggest growth, it was at the time never comfortable at all. If it's industry related, gosh, it's been almost 25 years going from working for a company to taking the risk to going out on my own, establishing my own practice with my own brand was scary. I think a lot of the changes in the industry, and whether it's in how advisors do business or the change from in 33 years, I mean, I've seen a change from almost exclusively commission-based work in the industry to where we are now, 100% fee-based. And so there's just always a lot of changes. And when you run your own business, when you're an entrepreneur, as I am, there's the personal life and the business life is awful blended. So, about challenges, there's so many. I don't want to dive too far into a hole or into the weeds. So I'm going to stop and hope for an easier question.
No, there are no easier questions here.
Okay.
This is about life, right? But you're
Okay.
absolutely, I think everybody understands what you're saying. It's, what do they say? 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or you're zigging and they're zagging and something happens. Nothing really happens in a straight line, not if it's purposeful.
I would totally agree with that. As I look back on things, it's more like a stair step where, I have a really good friend, Charisse, and she has said for many years, all things change when people change. And so I've had circumstances where my viewpoint on something that maybe was always there, all of a sudden significantly changed, kind of an epiphany that allowed me to really make some leaps forward. And a lot of that came from I'm an advocate for coaching. I've provided coaching to other advisors, but also sought out coaching throughout my career, spent many tens of thousands of dollars on coaching. And for those who are maybe the word coaching is a little abstract as it might apply to what I do. It's really getting outside objective opinions on what I'm doing wrong, or might be open-minded to change and being challenged. And I think that for all of us, regardless of what we do, or if we don't have a career at all, challenging what we think we already know is extremely healthy. I think that putting ourselves, certainly for me, but I think for most people, putting yourself in an uncomfortable position, an awkwardness, not, of course, an unsafe situation, it can only end up being positive provided your ego's in the right place.
I like the last statement. Yeah, ego. Man, using that as a bouncing off point here, how do you see benefits, or what benefits do you see in sharing your life experiences? Because you're putting your ego on the line there, saying, "Hey, I messed up, but I learned this point."
Yeah, there's none of us want to be incorrect on things. And even a step further, if we are incorrect, we don't want a lot of people to know that we were incorrect. So that's kind of where the ego can come into play. But that also can prevent people from seeking answers and truth from others. Being unafraid of making simple unintended mistakes is helpful. One of the more transformational aspects of my life is when I went through a divorce, 30 some odd years ago. And it was very challenging. It ended up in a personal bankruptcy, chapter 7, and went through a whole bunch of stuff because of a challenging divorce and everything that goes with that. And that made an impact on me. Now, other times where I've struggled personally throughout my 50 plus odd years is I think that has created some empathy where helping people, it's possible that I can connect with people because I have definitely had challenges and overcome those challenges in my life. I believe in being forward thinking at all times. And as I've seen throughout my life, the way other people might handle challenges that didn't go their way, it can be defeating. And if you have more than a few of those challenges within a short period of time, it can take all of the life out of somebody, maybe create some feelings of victimhood. And so probably probably the support of the people around me and in my career kind of kept me moving forward. And so I always think, and still do, I think my best days, Patrice, are ahead of me instead of behind me. And that's a mindset I'm not fully sure where it came from. It's certainly a perspective of the coaches that I've paid to assist me. I'm always looking to learn, always looking to improve.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure how directly I answered your question, but those are the thoughts that come to mind.
Well, you mentioned moving forward too. Many people get stagnant and then they are challenged. And what do you see as the value in being forced to take action? You have to move forward.
I think most people that I've come across in my life are capable of more, if not significantly more than they themselves think they're capable of. And so therefore, if there are people that are well-meaning in that person's life, or as it happened in mine, that give a push into something, I think in the end, the individual being pushed likely had a successful outcome, or at least more successful than they might have anticipated shortly after they were pushed. So I just think that people rise to the occasion. I think of promotions. I think of opportunities I've been given throughout my life. In the moment where I got it, I might be like, high five, this is awesome. And then in the same moment, scared, am I adequate enough? Can I do this? And in most cases, fears never play out. Outcomes tend to be better than what was expected. So I think some people just need a push. And what I found, Patrice, is in my career, is I've not only had those experiences that were organic, I'll call it, but when you seek out coaching, when you seek out people that you pay to push you, that also becomes a habit. You've felt that feeling. It's a familiar feeling, and so you don't know how you're going to get on the other side of that obstacle. And so it's self-fulfilling, and you get stronger in that area, and more courageous, or at least less fearful of taking on the next challenge.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. When you face one challenge and you succeed, no matter how hard it is, it's easy. I want to say maybe it's not easier, but you're more willing to take on the next one, and it gets better and better and better.
Yeah, I think the extra part of that might be more difficult is you're likely not going to be undefeated. You're going to fail, but if you can also cultivate the mindset of, okay, I failed in whatever it is, because usually when you think of, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? It's not all that bad. But if you can have the mindset of, okay, what did I learn from that? What would I do differently? what can I take forward from that is where when I talk with my team all the time, I said, mistakes are learning opportunities. And so that's where I think win-win in terms of attacking a challenge is if it goes well, yes, I build my confidence. We got the successful outcome we want for myself, the business, my family, whatever. But if it doesn't go my way, I have an opportunity to study, if you will, well, was it avoidable? Was it, because well, more than sometimes things just happen.
Yes.
They're outside of my control. But if there was an element that I could have controlled, what can I take forward from what I learned? And if I face a similar challenge, put that into action.
I have to admit, sometimes I'm disappointed myself. Have you?
Sure. Yeah, of course. I'm somewhat somewhat mortified of letting people down around me. And so that's where when I let myself down, it's usually because in my own head I've let somebody else down.
Yeah.
And also most all of those situations, the other person is not feeling as down about the situation as I am. And that's true whether it's, my 11-year-old son or it's a client or a business associate, a peer. I think real briefly back on, the movie It's a Wonderful Life. The lead, Jimmy Stewart, was suicidal until Clarence jumped off the bridge, and all of a sudden the only thing that Jimmy Stewart's character could think about is, oh, I want to save him.
Right.
Became more important than his own issues. And I think for a lot of us, we think of not wanting to disappoint people around us that we care about.
So you're ringing bells?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I've earned my wings yet, but yes.
What about intellectually? We've been talking a lot about challenges, but I think a lot of that is visceral. It's egotistical. It's a drive. What about stretching yourself intellectually?
Well, I think that intellectually, you could have that could mean a lot of things. It could mean book knowledge. What first thing goes into my head when you ask the question, Patrice, is I have never been afraid of asking the dumb question, even in a large audience. And so in terms of my growth, it's been asking questions, critical thinking. If I hear a word in a conversation that I'm not exactly sure what that means, I have to go get the definition, and that's just how I learn. So to me, that's how growing intellectually serves me, I guess, is I'm not my ego doesn't get in the way of asking the dumb question. And I think it does with a lot of people. I remember being in different meetings, and it still occurs, but when I worked for larger corporations and we'd be in a manager's meeting with 15 fairly high ego individuals, myself included, maybe at the time. And afterwards we'd be talking about the meeting and people would start asking questions at that point. What do you think he meant, or he or she meant, whoever was leading the meeting? And I don't really understand why people have a question in their head and they don't ask it. I don't know if that's intellectual, but I guess it's where my mind goes.
I wouldn't be surprised if it goes back to the ego there. People don't want to, you mentioned it yourself.
For sure.
People don't want to be seen as
yes.
less.
Yes.
But as I said,
100%.
There is no stupid question. In fact, the question you ask is probably the question that's on everybody else's mind.
Took a long time to figure that out, but in the moment, it can be uncomfortable when you have a leader of an audience say, okay, are there any questions? Everybody clear on this? And then there's silence. It's not easy, and it can be awkward to ask the question, but that's a moment. If the answer to the question is meaningful, it's going to help you go forward, where the effective use of that answer is far more reaching than being uncomfortable for 30 seconds. I think that's the calculus that over time and experience, for me anyway, I got comfortable with it.
Okay. Community. The question here in front of me is why getting involved in the community is important.
I love to help and teach people. So community can mean a lot of things. It can be geographic community. I've moved an awful lot in my years. When I think of community, I think of the financial industry as a community. And so my desire to educate clients, if I think of that as a community, because rather than a client just doing what I recommend, although I think is a pretty good idea. I want them to understand the purpose of their money and the strategies and such, and then to widen the lens to the financial industry and other advisors. It is my intent to be a thought leader to help develop others when I can. And then in the community, as I think most people think of it in terms of a definition, and this is just as I've gotten older, being a part of the school, being a part of going to community meetings, pitching in to volunteer at the church or volunteer picking up trash on a, kind of a trash event day kind of a thing. It just gives a greater sense of purpose, it wasn't something I was interested in much in my 20s and 30s, but as I've gotten older, it's given me more purpose.
It not only gives you purpose, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It gives you a sense of fulfillment. You are part of something.
Yes.
You are giving back. They are giving to you. I find community to be extremely helpful, especially when it comes to a volunteer effort.
Yeah. And as you mentioned that, and it's been a while since I've mentioned it to you, but I think my F3 group, and F3 is a nationwide men's group for fitness, fellowship, and faith. That has been tremendous, meeting with guys regularly around a workout or getting together to talk about how we can be better fathers, brothers, husbands. I started getting involved with F3, which is f3nation.com, by the way, for any of our listeners, about 3 years ago. And it is such a unique movement, really, because there's no money element to it. But in terms of me coming a bit out of my shell and becoming a stronger leader, and then having a community of men, which I think, you get beyond high school and college, I think it's very challenging for men to develop new friendships that are outside of maybe where they work. So from a personal standpoint, that has been extremely impactful.
That's fantastic. And I think you're right. Men especially don't make the social connections that women do. And it makes me richer as a woman to have my female friends. And I see men around me and I think, don't you have somebody you can talk to? Just talk.
That's a big part of it, Patrice. I mean, nobody needs to pull out the violin, but men have been under attack in the last decade plus, it seems like to me. And in a lot of situations when you have a family, as I do, or children, there are differences between men and women and fathers and mothers in terms of possibly connecting with other mothers, because we have a fifth grader and it's just different.
It is indeed.
Thank goodness. Thank the Lord there are differences between men and women. It's been very rewarding for my 57 years.
Absolutely with you. All right, Ryan, how can listeners reach you if they want to take this discussion a little bit further?
They can always go to www.poterack.net. That's POTERACK.net. They can call our office at 704-366-5776. We're out there on Twitter and LinkedIn. And hopefully I'm not going to be canceled for some of my comments, Patrice.
There were no comments in there that were at all untrue or offensive. And I can say that for clients too.
Few.
Right.
Very good.
All right. Now, listeners, listen. Sometimes a helping hand can make a difference with life's challenges, because life is not lived on a spreadsheet. Follow this podcast for the latest shows, share with others, and thanks for being with us. I'm Patrice Sikora.
Thank you for listening to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. To ask questions about topics covered during the show, or get a copy of Making It Count, Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet by Ryan Poterack, visit www.poterack.net or give us a call at 704-366-5776. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Poterack Capital Advisory. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Poterack Capital Advisory does not offer legal or tax advice. Please consult the appropriate professional regarding your individual circumstances. Nothing contained herein is to be considered a solicitation, research material, an investment recommendation, or advice of any kind. The information contained herein may contain information that is subject to change without notice. Any investments or strategies referenced herein do not take into account the investment objectives, financial situation, or particular needs of any specific person.
Product sustainability must be independently determined for each individual investor. Poterack Capital Advisory explicitly disclaims any responsibility for product suitability or suitability determinations related to individual investors.